me start record. All right. Okay, so welcome after our 3-week break. So what I'm going to do is, as I was just explaining to you, we're going to do a process of Hitbonenut. And anybody who's watching the recording, um, go through this process as well. Because this is really the process, certainly that I've found to be useful in the learning of this kind of Torah. Okay, so okay, so what we're going to be looking at is we're going to take a look at paragraph 11. Nechama, if you can keep your if you can keep your camera on, that would be really useful for me. Alkalea says that she's going to be in and out, so I understand that, but otherwise I don't know who I'm talking to. Okay. So look, chapter 3 is not, it's not so easy, and yet it's also not so difficult. And I feel like if we can ground ourselves in paragraph 11, which is the Mashalim, the 3 Mashalim for Mimale Kolalmim, which means the way that Hashem's light works in the world, it doesn't just work in one way. It works in 3 ways, or really 3 that breaks up into 4. So if we understand these Mashalim really well, and they're very accessible because they're things that we know, it's sunlight, it's candlelight, it's the life force in the body, and then how the life force in the body goes into the details of our body. And if we can understand that, then we can understand everything that's going forward. But if we don't know that, like as part of our knowledge base, then it makes it more difficult going forward. So what I want to do is really just do a deep dive into paragraph 11. And we're going to do this workshop style. So, I mean, I'm tempted because we haven't looked at it for a long time. So I'm going to share with you a summary that I did just to bring your mind back to what it is that we're talking about. And this was, look, I find that when I'm trying to pin something down, this is the kind of summary that I make for myself. Not everybody needs this kind of summary, but this is what works for me. So I almost literally write up, in my own words, every detail. Because what I'm going to ask you to do is go and study it and create your own kind of your own summary of some sort. And then you have to learn it so well that you know it, that it becomes part of something that you know. And then you can do a meditation on it. But until you know the information, you can't really do any kind of real contemplation on it, because what are you going to contemplate? And it's really in that process of contemplation or meditation that you go deep, that you start to really understand what you don't understand, or you start to understand what you do understand, and things open up. But first we have to do the work. That's the Eon. So this is the first stage. I'm just going to go through it briefly just because we've had such a long break. So he starts off by saying, look, previously he spoke about the way that sunlight works in order to give us a sense of how Hashem's light can come into the world, but that the light itself is not changed. And here he says, and I'm not going to go into all the details of the sunlight because he will speak about it. He says, look, the mashal of sunlight is not sufficient to understand the light of Elohim in Memale Kolamim. Therefore, we need three more mashalim. Candlelight, the life force of the nefesh in the body, chayot hanefesh, baguf, the power of the activator in the activated, koach hapoel benifal. And we'll find out what those mean. So in Memale, there are three aspects. It's or, chayas, and koach. That's just what we've said there. The candlelight and the sunlight are or, the chayot hanefesh baguf is chayos, and koach is the koach hapoel benifal. Then he talks a bit about sunlight. So the sunlight shines in a manner of hashra, of settling. It doesn't unify with the creations of the physical world, meaning the mineral, plant, animal, and human. Why? Because the source of sunlight is spiritual. What does that mean? So the sunlight, according to the Rambam, the planets or orbits are a fifth substance, which are different from the four elements of earth, fire, air, water. And they have no taste or smell. So he's saying that the sun is not one of the four foundations of the physical world. So it's literally something more non-physical. Okay, so sunlight is physical relative to its spiritual source. I'm assuming it means the sun, but it is spiritual relative to created beings, meaning mineral, plant, animal, and human. Therefore, it does not unite with them. Because it rests on them, our eyes can see. Because the way that I understood that, I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but because the sunlight bounces back off the objects, that's how we see physically, right? That's how we see color, that's how we see objects, is the light coming off of the objects. The light isn't absorbed into the objects. It reflects back off the objects. And it's called Or Yashar, which means that it's a light coming from above to below. That's sunlight. So we learned many things about sunlight before, about how, depending on how you receive the light. So that we learned from sunlight that the source doesn't have to change, even though the receiver could see the light in a different way. So if the sunlight is shining through my window and my window is green, I'll see the sunlight as green. And if your window is blue, you'll see the sunlight as blue. But it doesn't change the sunlight itself. And from that, we learned the idea that the source, meaning Hashem, doesn't have to change, even though his light is received in many different ways. So that was something we looked at before. And that's what we could learn from the sunlight, but it's not enough to understand the way that Hashem works with his light or his presence in the world. So then we need candlelight. So candlelight is still light, but it's from the element of fire, which is one of the four elements of this physical world. Therefore, it can unite with the physical world, with the four elements. So the fire unites with the wick and the oil, and thus creates more light. So as it, burns the wick and it burns the oil, so the fire is created by that. And this light is called Or Choser, meaning it's a light that goes from below to above. It's generated down here, and the light goes up. Therefore, it is more felt or murgash than sunlight, because it's uniting with the physical world in a more tangible way. But what's the problem with the light, the sunlight, and the candlelight? No vitality comes from either of these lights. They don't enliven anything. With light, no change takes place. The space that it lights up is not changed, right? You have the sunlight or the candle. It just lights up the room. It shows you what is there, but it doesn't change what is there. So the space is not changed. It remains physical, and the light doesn't change. It remains spiritual. So there's no real interaction. I mean, there's interaction on some level, but it's an interaction that is called shefa, shefa b'derech hashra. Hashra means that it's resting on it, but there's no integration, there's no transformation. And we know that, okay, so this is too much. We'll see these are two ways in which Hashem's light does work in the physical world, but it's not the whole story. Okay. But now, when you go into your meditation, after you've learned this, if you just close your eyes and think about these two mashalim, you think about the process of the sunlight and how it manifests in the world. And then you think about candlelight, how it manifests in a dark room. And just understand these concepts, not just as intellectual concepts, but you can feel them. And then when we come to the Nimshal, which is Hashem, and the Mimale, the light of Hashem in the world, then it will have more meaning. All right. So those are the two levels of light.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. But please keep your camera on. And now I can't hear you because you turned your sound off. No, I can't hear you, Nechama.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So say if either if you have a candle or a light bulb, the light bulb will eventually burn out. The candle will burn down. And if something catches fire in the room, will touch the candle, it will burn up. So how does that, I don't know, I'm not asking too many questions, but how will that fit into the muscle? I mean, I understand that from the light itself, there's no change except that you can see. But
Right.
if it touches the fire, then something's going to happen.
So, what happens is the element of fire in the world, it consumes things. So we talk about a candle as the mashal because it's something that's controlled. But yes, it burns up, it interacts with the physicality of the world. And as it burns up the wick and the oil, it creates light. Now, he's not talking about here the fact that it will eventually go out. The thing about mashalim is not every single detail of the mashal will be applicable. That's the nature of a mashal. So you have to learn which part of the mashal is relevant to the nimshal and which isn't. I haven't thought about, when we go to the nimshal, if you could say that it burns out, that the light will eventually go out. I don't know if that's useful for the nimshal.
Okay.
Here he's telling us which part of the candle light is going to teach us something about the way in which Hashem works in the world.
Okay.
With his
So I
light.
shouldn't push the comparison too far because if, also I imagine, and because we think of the sun as the epitome of fire, like as hot as it can get. So anything that gets too close to the sun is going to be consumed and burn up.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's true of Hashem's energy, like Nadav and
Exactly.
Abihu, they
Yeah.
got too close.
Right. Exactly. Later, when you when we learn about Ratzo and Shuv, which is what Nadav and Avihu were, is like if you just stay with that sun energy, which is far, which is very close to Hashem, but doesn't come back down into the world, then, perhaps it would work as part of the mashal. But for now, so that's the thing, even in the discussion that was happening on the WhatsApp group, when we do hitbonenot, like when we start to think about what we're learning, some of the things we come up with are going to be correct, and some of them are not going to be correct. And that's why we keep going back to the text itself to see what he's trying to tell us. And obviously, what we start to do when we start to make comparisons is we're going into Rochav, right? You're going just from the basic Eon into Rochav. But then when you want to go back into like the Omek, which is to go deeper, you actually come back to the text and say, is what I'm saying in line with what he's trying to teach me? Or is it, that it's not relevant or that it's actually a little bit off? So sometimes it'll be correct and it'll be just like expansive and like really exciting. Or sometimes you'll find like, oh, what I thought was not 100%. It works both, so that's part of the process. But it's good that you start to have questions because it means you're starting to think about it. And you see that he's giving us mashalim that are very tangible, but not every single detail of it is going to be relevant. And that's why we have different mashalim. So let's go back to the text, but it's good to ask. Okay. So that's the sunlight and the candlelight. Uh, all right. So here we go. Chayas hanefesh beguf. Jons, are you following? Okay, is this useful for you? Okay. Okay. In contrast, the life force, the chayas of the nefesh, has a connection with the limbs of the body and blends and integrates with them. Okay, so this is where it's different from the light, right? The life force of the nefesh connects with the body. And what happens? The chayas changes from spiritual to physical, and the limbs change from no life to being enlivened. Hi, Nacham, are you back with us?
Yes, yes. Sorry.
Okay, I thought maybe I offended you.
No, 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 no.
Okay, no
Somebody else
problem.
offended me.
All right, good. Okay, so just to reiterate, since you're back with us, so now we're going to the next mashal, the next level. And this is the life force of the soul in the body. Chayas hanefesh b'guf. And how is this different from the light? Because the light didn't change anything. Now we're going into, you can feel it, your life force in your body. What happens? The life force has a connection with the limbs of the body and it integrates with it. So the life force, the chayas, changes from being spiritual to being physical. And the limbs, meaning the body, change from having no life to being enlivened. So they go from being physical to being enlivened, which you could say is spiritual in a way. So there's a transformation happening, something changing, because there's an integration. So the chayas enters into each limb according to its nature or level, in contrast to light that spreads equally throughout the whole space. the light just spreads everywhere. But here the life force enters into each limb in according to the nature of the limb. And this is called Shefa B'derech Hitlabshut. So we know Hitlabshut is like in clothing. So the nefesh, the soul, encloses itself into the body. So how is this different from the light? Here we have it lapshut, and there it was hashra. There it was just like shining onto it. Here it's integrating into it. It's being enclosed in it. So now
When does that happen? Does that happen
when,
at birth or every morning when we wake up?
um, so if this wasn't happening to you at every single moment, you would not be alive.
All right, so it's happening now.
It's happening now. This is the mashal. These are all mashalim about how Hashem works in the world. But first, we just trying to understand the mashal. Every single moment, Nechama, your nefesh, the chayos, the life force of your nefesh is is moving through your body. Just feel that.
The first two examples are very visual, like you can picture them. Like it's much harder to picture the soul.
Right. So then, when it comes to the meditation, and you can do a quick one, just close your eyes and breathe. And feel that life force, just the movement in your body.
So we experience that through the breath.
Well, the breath is our access point, perhaps, but the chayes is moving through the blood. As you're breathing and you bring your attention to your breath, you can start to feel, your fingers tingling perhaps and your toes, and you become much more aware of the energy moving through your body. What do you feel when you sit and you breathe? You're not just feeling your lungs. You become more aware.
But your lungs is what activates the process.
Well, what we're going to find out is that actually it's the heart that is activating the process. But yeah, if you don't breathe, you're also not going to have a life force. So yeah, the breath is vital.
So the heart and the lungs are working together to keep the vessel open to receive Hashem's light. Is that accurate?
So, let's hold off on that because we're going to see how this works with brain, heart, liver. And it's interesting that he doesn't talk about breath. And that would be an interesting question, why the breath isn't part of the mashal. But maybe it's because we don't need it. But through the breath, just in a meditation experience, we tune into what is going on in our body. And certainly it is one of the, most vital factors in keeping the process moving. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going from something that is like more makif, which is sunlight, something that surrounds us, and even the light of a candle in a room. And now we're going into our physical body, and that's the mashal. And it's something that we can, as Yoani says, it's not so easy to visualize. But now we're going into something much deeper. We're not just visualizing it, we're feeling it and experiencing it. So what is the limitation of this chayes hanefesh baguf? Here he says, but this chayos in the limbs is pashut. It's simple. All the limbs feel they are enlivened by the soul that is enclosed in them. Like it's a general energy in the body. And if we want to go to a deeper level of interaction, so we need to go to the level of koach. And what the koach is it's taking the chayes hanefesh baguf and it's taking it into a more detailed process of enlivening the body. And he's going to explain that in a very beautiful way very soon. Okay, so the koach hapoel ben nifal, it's a strange kind of term, but it's something you should learn. It means the power of the activator in the activated. It sounds very technical, but it's really the life force that is activating the object, like the subject that is activating the object. That's just what it means. I don't know. Let's see how. So the life force is contracted to create a specific ability or koach, e.g., the power of movement in the hand or the power of intellect in the brain. So it's the life force, but it's going into the smaller details and taking on a different modality, as it were, based on the organ or on the details of the body in a more detailed way. The chayos is more pashut, it's more general, and this becomes much more detailed and more specific. And we're going to see that we need all these mashalim when we talk about Hashem. Okay, now we're going deeper into the mashal of our body. Now, the thing about a mashal is it's supposed to be something that is easy for us to understand. But for many of us, we don't know our bodies that well, unfortunately. And I have to say that I looked up some of these terminologies. But this is also part of the beauty of the learning, is we're going to discover more things about the way our body is working. And as we do that, we actually learn more about how our energy is moving in our bodies and how that is a mashal for how Hashem penetrates the world. You know, just like in chapter 1, where we saw that our brain was a mashal for the way things are working. So here too, it's going even deeper and more detailed into our body. And one of the things that the Gemara says is that a person is a small world and the world is a large man. Like man is a small world and the world is a small man. I'm saying person, meaning that the Tzelem Elokim, that we were created with the same structure as the larger universe was created. And that's why we are a mashal for the way things work in the spiritual worlds. Otherwise, how would we have access to understanding the spiritual worlds? We wouldn't. So here, the thing that what Chassidus does, and especially Shara Yechud, is it tells us which mashalim correspond to which energy in Hashem. And so because if we just discuss Hashem in a very abstract way, we have no way of understanding spiritual ideas. We just can't. So then the world becomes a mashal for how Hashem works in the world. But you need Chassidus to tell you which mashal corresponds to which spiritual idea. So, for example, in chapter 1, we had Bina. What's Bina? So we think we know what Bina is. It's understanding, but say you you don't know what Bina is. It is abstract. So then we had the mashal of the river. Bina is like a river. And then you could understand aspects of Bina because you know what a river is. Okay, so here, that's the process that we're going with here, is we need to understand the mashal very well in order to then understand the nimshal. And what is the nimshal? It's Hashem, and the way Hashem manifests in the physical world. Mimale kol amin. So then he puts in parenthesis. He wants to give us more detailed information. Okay. So this happens, what the koach hapal b'nifal happens through the nefesh being enclosed in the external kalim, meaning the capillaries, the gidei hadam. So the koach corresponds to the capillaries, which are the blood vessels that carry the blood. I'm going to do these three, and then I'll give you more details. When the soul is invested in the inner kalim, the gidei hargasha, which are the nerves, it is light. And when the nefesh is invested in the intermediary kalim, the gidei dofek, the arteries, it is chayas. Okay, I'm going to skip to this parenthesis. So koach is the nefesh that rests in the liver. Chayas is the ruach that rests in the heart. And the or pnimi is the neshama that rests in the brain. And the or machkif is the chaya and yachida. Okay, so what's going on here? Let's have a look. He talks about three kinds of blood vessels. Let's go from the most external to the most internal. So the most internal, let's say. The most internal, the inner kalim, is the nervous system. And it is the neshama that rests in the brain. Jons, you're looking confused.
Did you say we're going through from the most internal?
So the most internal, like the deepest one, it's called the inner kalim. The inner kalim is the light. In some ways, it's the most external, right? Because the light is makif. But he calls it the inner kalim because it's the most potent.
But
So
is
this
that the nerves or is that the arteries? I thought the nerves were the second level.
No, it's actually, look, he did it in a different order here. But,
okay.
we'll look at it from, I'm going to describe it to you slightly differently. Okay.
Is there a correlation between above and below, like where the koach is in the liver and the chayas is in the heart? Is there a correlation between the two?
Absolutely. That's what he's trying to show us. So the nefesh, we took koach is the nefesh that rests in the liver, and it's the external kalim, the capillaries. The chayos is the ruach that rests in the heart, and that's the intermediary kalim, which is the arteries. I'm going to show you, we did this in a diagram as well, but I want you to just experience it. So basically you have the inner kalim, which is the light. That's what he calls the inner kalim. The light rests in the brain. Or at least you could say it's the or pnimi, which is the candlelight, rests in the brain. It's the neshama energy. So you start off with the light, the or pnimi, which is like the candlelight. It rests in the brain, which is the place of the neshama.
And that corresponds to the nervous system.
That's the nervous system.
Okay.
Now, what is the nervous system? It's very fascinating because I looked it up. The nerves are fiber bundles. They transmit electrical signals between the brain and the body. It's not to do with blood. It's electrical impulses that communicates between the brain and the body. And you see, it makes sense because the light is, like he described, it's a different system than when you get to blood. It's like dofek, it's pumping, it's very physical. The brain is electrical impulses, and that's the nervous system. And the two will work together, but that's the system of or that's happening in the body, right? Just feel that for a moment. You know, you have your brain, which is now communicating to your body, and it's doing it through the nervous system, which is it's sending electrical messages, impulses to the body. That's how the neshama works. That's how or light works. Got it? Okay. Now we enter, look, we even have this neck, you know, it separates between this whole neshama energy. And now we're going to go into the heart. Now, the heart, you just put your hand on your heart, and now you have gidei dofek. Dofek is a pulse. This is the next level. It's the intermediary kalim. This is the life force. The life force is in the blood. And the blood is pulsing through your body. Through what? Arteries, gidei dofek. What are arteries? Arteries are thick-walled vessels, like they're very large, carrying oxygenated blood away from the heart. So it's taking the blood that's getting oxygen. Where's it getting oxygen from, Nechama?
From the lungs.
Yeah, from our breath. Okay, so we got the connection here.
I'm waiting to see how the capillaries connect to the liver.
Okay, so so now we've got this heart energy, arteries pumping blood to the body. And I remember in one of the classes, my anatomy is not great, but Mila was saying that you'll find in the body that the nerves run very close to the arteries because the nerves are giving information to the arteries. You know, the nervous system and is working together with it. And it's information coming from the brain, but working together with the heart. Okay, so that's the heart energy. And that's where you get your pulse. Or one of the places you know you get the pulse, but it's certainly this dofek. Dofek is a pulse.
So I
Okay,
take it also in that nigun.
Koldodi.
Yeah,
Koldodi dofekli.
yeah. What does dofek mean in that?
do it, look it up.
Knocking, like isn't it like knocking?
Right. Hold on.
Okay.
You can have a look and see. But you see, that becomes your Rochav. Okay, where else do I know Dofik from? Does it correspond to this or doesn't it? But okay, that's, those are your associations. Yeah, on the literal level, it wouldn't make so much sense. But if you look deeper into the meaning of that pasuk, you'll probably find that there's something there. Okay, so this is our ruach. In the heart is where the ruach rests. The brain is more associated with intellect, the ruach with emotions, and then, okay, then the external kalim are the capillaries, the gidei dam, hadam. What are the capillaries? Capillaries, unlike the arteries, which are very thick, they're tiny, one-cell thick vessels that connect arteries to veins for substance exchange.
Hmm.
So now the capillaries are going from the large arteries into the small details of every system in your body. There'll be capillaries everywhere. There are capillaries presumably in your lungs, in your fingers, it's going from a large kind of river, as it were, into small tributaries. But it's the blood, it's carrying the blood. So it's taking the life force into the small details and into the edges, and it's becoming more specific.
So are the capillaries carrying the nefesh? Then it's like the nefesh is flowing through wherever the capillaries are.
So look, the nefesh is associated more with the capillaries.
Okay.
We're still making derech klal because the nefesh is in the blood.
So how are you distinguishing between nefesh and ruach?
Okay, so in general, we have 5 levels of the soul, right? Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. So the nefesh is most associated with the blood. That's where the liver comes in. Then the chayas, the nefesh, the ruach is more associated with the heart. Neshama is more associated with the intellect. And then chaya and yechida are makif. So the chaya and yechida are associated here with the sunlight and no particular part of the body because they're not literally a part, they makif. They're surrounding the body.
So is ruach what distinguishes us from nefesh, which nefesh applies to animals as well? Is that true? And
If you
nefesh is anything that's we'll say alive. No, yeah, the animal world. Animals have a nefesh, or is it different? Actually, it's a question I'm asking.
yeah, I don't know if our nefesh is the same as an animal nefesh. Everything obvious, because if you look, I'm trying to think if I can answer that question accurately, because you have to go and look at a text and say, look at the way that Hashem created the world in Bereshit, and you'll see there's a different language is used when it talks about creating the animal world and creating humans. So our nefesh is going to be, might be different than an animal nefesh.
I'm actually thinking about kashrus when the reason why we drain the blood from an animal before eating it is it because the blood contains the life force, which
Right.
is the nefesh. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I also wonder, how much if we're totally absorbed and controlled into our animal soul, then we're much more like animals than we might be otherwise.
Exactly. Look, that is why we call it, in Chabad Chassidus, they call it the animal soul. But when we're talking about the animal soul, what are we really saying? We're saying that it's our survival instinct because it's so connected to the survival of the body.
Mhm.
So it's very profound and magnificent the way Hashem has created our nefesh. But if we stay stuck in just survival mode, without this other levels of our consciousness, then we get stuck in our animal consciousness, which is, I just need to survive. And that has its
And
own
that
problem.
that could be um, a minimal distinction between a human and an animal if it consumes us. If we don't have that means of elevating. Anyway,
Exactly. That's why it's called the animal soul.
but it's this. But I'm struck by the fact that it's the same word. It's still nefesh. It's what's enlivened. That level.
I'm trying to think if the word nefesh is used. Yeah, it's the most basic level of life force. It's the life force that's associated with the body, with basic life force. But Nechama, you see, what's interesting is that as soon as you start entering into the details of the text and really understanding it, immediately you start making associations, you have questions, you're engaged with it, right?
Mhm.
And that's an important part of the learning. Um, and it's also important to say, like, let me also stick. I have these other questions because I have other associations, but sometimes these questions can take us away from what the text is trying to tell us. They kind of like, yeah, it's interesting, and you go on a bit of a detour, but let's come back also, make this distinction. I'm mentioning it because this is also an important part of the learning to say, oh, yeah, go on this kind of like meditation because I have an association. Like the word nefesh takes you into a whole question about animal soul, and it's fascinating and it's good because it's stimulating your rochav in a sense. You know what I mean by rochav? Like it's
Mhm.
expansive. And then you put that as, you go on your like it's almost like I don't know, call it a thought process, and then you come back and say, okay, now what's he trying to tell me here?
Mhm.
Let's come back to the text and see what this is all about. But yeah, it's all good.
So I,
Well,
I,
maybe
I
last
like that. I mean, I
sentence.
feel like it's kind of exploring the edges to see what fits, and then you come back.
Right. And
But
this
but
is
if
what
but if we just stuck to the text and memorized what it says, so this means this and this means that, then you're not. For me, it's not really engaging in the process. It's just kind of.
okay, so
I don't
let me create a distinction here. Um, I'm going to stop here for a moment because in a way, Nechama, you see, because we're engaging with the text in so much detail, so you're beginning to have questions and have other thoughts. But so if you don't engage with the text in a lot of detail, you won't even come to that level of understanding.
Mhm.
Now, in order to go to the next level of understanding, it does require, in my opinion, and not only in my opinion, but the opinion, of the Frierdiker Rebbe, who describes this process. He says you have to know the text so well that that becomes the foundation from which you expand. Because if you don't know the text really well, you're just expanding here and there, and you're not really going on the journey that the author is trying to take you on. Meaning that it's fine to go on these short journeys, but ultimately, because it's a longer work, he's taking us on a particular journey. And when you go on that particular journey, the expansiveness won't be just like things like a bit of this and a bit of that, but he'll take you to a place where then you expand exponentially, like you really expand into the place that he's trying to show you something that you've never known before. But if you don't know the text really well to the point that it's your knowledge base, then you can't expand into a deeper understanding of the particular thing he's trying to show you. And so partly what happens in the Rochav is that you make associations based on what you already know. But now he wants to take you to in a place that you've never been before. So most of us just stay in the Rochav and we think that something happened because look, there's a certain pleasure, right? In that moment of like, oh, nefesh, an animal, and our animal soul, and etc., right? It starts to trigger associations in your mind. It's pleasurable, right? And I don't mean it in a negative way. Yes or no?
Yeah, I hear
Yeah,
you. And what I'm hearing is that if you keep making those associations, you are connecting, but if you don't come back, you could get lost in the universe.
right. And also, what you'll do is you'll make connections to what you know because it's your Achav. So, okay, you build a little bit more of what you know. But if you just stay with what you know and you don't go back and really learn what he has said, you won't be able to go to a new place that you've never been before. Because that's the Omek. The Omek is a new place that you've never been before. And that's when you really start to touch your neshama. Well, more than your neshama, that's when you start to touch the Bina Liba.
Mhm.
So, oh wow, that took that was quite a long process. Okay,
I need to
so
ask something,
yeah, Jans.
and I don't know if it's a tangent or you might have mentioned it before in another class. But why is it specifically the liver that is connected with the nefesh?
So, do you know anything about how the liver functions?
No. Or it cleans the
The
blood,
liver is
exactly.
the body's garbage can. That's how it's been described.
Right.
It
So,
gets rid of all the toxins.
Oh, so all the blood flows through the liver to be cleaned.
yeah,
Okay, and there's no other organ that does something similar. I,
think about it. What other organ is there? It's like, okay,
this,
you know about kashrut. If you're going to eat liver, you have to do a lot of things to take the blood out, right? We don't
yeah.
really do it anymore. But to kasher a liver and eat the liver is requires a lot of work because there's so much blood in it.
Mm.
We don't think about our liver that much. We think about our brain, we think about our heart, But in Chassidus, the liver is it's kaved. It's heavy. First of all, it's large and it's heavy, and and it's the third. Um, it's the third organ that is spoken about a lot as foundational. It's brain, heart, liver.
Okay. What do
Yeah.
the kidneys do? The kidneys, do they
They
do
also
they
they also work with the blood, but they mainly deal with the urine. So the kidneys and the liver do work together. Um, you know, these are kinds of things where, this is the mashal, and we're not so, it just shows how much we're not so connected to the mashal of our body. And it's quite useful to just go Google it. Like I did with with this, the nerves, the arteries, and the capillaries. What's the difference between them? And it was fascinating to me. And then you see how he's describing this mashal and how the mashal works so so well, or how it's describing our body. So, go look up kidneys. Kidneys are spoken about a lot in Chassidus as well, because, it's basically, we have two brains. We have the right and left brain, and we have the right and left kidney. It's like the brains of our unconscious, the lower part of our body. And it says that Avram used to learn Torah through his kidneys. So, that's perhaps it's talking about, a certain level of consciousness.
So liver and kidneys both filter out impurities.
Yeah, but in different ways. As I say, I'm not, I'd have to Google it to give you something precise. But basically, the kidneys are connected to urine. That's how they get rid of the impurities. So it's not so much related to blood, but it is connected to the birur of certain impurities. Yeah.
So the kidneys do not take impurities from the blood, but the liver does?
Let's look it up. Okay. Kidneys filter waste, excess water, and impurities from the blood, producing urine.
So it's
So they,
mostly liquid then.
yeah, they maintain bodily balance by regulating fluid levels, electrolytes, and acid-base balance. Additionally, they control blood pressure, stimulate red blood cell production, and keep bones. They're connected to the bones. Okay, let's see the liver function. They filter toxins from the blood, producing bile for fat digestion and storing energy. Maintains metabolism, creates clotting factors, and supports immunity. Regulates blood sugar and stores essential vitamins. So certainly the liver works more with the blood. Um, and the kidneys is more part of the urinary tract system. The urinary tract comes out of the kidneys. All right. So look, we're already an hour into it, but let me just pause the recording now. Basically, what I would, the process really is that you take this paragraph and you learn it in a very systematic way until you know it by heart. Like, what is the sunlight? What does it do? We're just dealing with, forget about any mashal now. We're just learning, no, we're not talking about the nimshal. We're going to see later how this applies. But if we don't know the nimshal very well, if we don't know the mashal very well, when it comes to the nimshal, we're going to get lost. The nimshal is going to be the way Hashem's light works in the world. So what we really need to do is, and we need to do this actually with every paragraph in Shari Yichud, in order to really, really understand it. So I don't know what the timing is like on this. So you learn the paragraph until you know it really well. And you can teach it to somebody else, or you can teach it to yourself, meaning you can say, okay, sunlight. These are the qualities of sunlight. This is the advanced, well, this is what it does, this is what it doesn't do. Okay, so then you go to candlelight. This is the quality of candlelight. This is what it does, this is what it doesn't do. And, you learn the difference between hashra and hitlabshut. Okay, then that's not enough. We go deeper. We go into the chayut hanefesh beguf, the way the soul is in the body. What happens there? How is that different to the light? And then we go into koach hapal v'nifal. What is that? And then you line everything up. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida, with the three different, with the nerves, the capillaries, the arteries, and with the brain, heart, and liver. Until it's knowledge, it's something you know. Let me show you. We did, I'm going to share this. This is what Mila and I did, where we basically created a chart. Where you can see it in brief, how it works. Or chayas koach. These are the mashalim. So you have the or breaks into two. It's the or pnimi, which is or choser, and the or makif, which is or yashar. It's the sunlight, the candlelight. Then the chayas is the soul enlivening the body in a general way. And then the koach is, but in a way of derech prat, or the details, the power to think, the power to see, the power to move. Those are the mashalim. Then how it corresponds to the levels of the soul. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida, the organs of the body, the liver, the heart, the brain, and then the blood vessels, all the vessels, the capillaries, the arteries, the nerves. So, this should now, this is something that you should be able to really know well. And already you should be able to look at this and say, oh, okay, I get it, right? Yoni? Yeah. But then you go back to the text, because this is in a general way. The text is then giving you the details. And, mainly what we're doing is we're learning here, Derech Prat. We're learning about the details, because the details are what change our brain. So this is like a summary.
So this is available on the Google Drive? This chart?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And also the summary that we worked from is also there. But it's best for you to do your own summary. Okay. So, you know what? Just since we've learned this, I know that we don't have enough time. Normally, I would stop now and let you study for half an hour. Do you want to do that and go back and just sit with the text yourself? And then we'll do a meditation. Do you want to do that? go into the text and just look over what we've been studying, and then we'll do a meditation. Who
Okay.
left? Okay, so I'm going to stop the report to it. So, okay, so once you've learned the text really, really well, what you do is you just go into a meditation space where you just close your eyes and you really just, rather than thinking intellectually like you have about it, you just let the information come at you, what you've learned. So, you might start with the makif of the sunlight being like the nefesh, being like Chaya and Yechida, and then going down through the different experiences. Or, just really just close your eyes and let it wash over you, the information that you've taken in. So obviously, the more you know it, the more it will just function as a meditation. But I'm going to stop I'm not going to leave the recording on. We're just going to see what comes up. Okay.